Babes in Spyland, The Truth Hurts, Episode 9. Agent Bigfoot shifted his weight, looking as if he expected mud to reappear. Is she always so... Agent Smith considered her next word. Blunt? He shook his head. No. Milkshakes poked her nose around the doorframe. Is she gone? Agent Black Turtle's head appeared above Milkshake's. That was scary. That was weird, Milkshake said, coming in. I've never seen her do that. She sneezed, catching the smoke from the candle. She never tells anyone anything more than they need to know, especially about the vice president or the other agencies. Is she extra stressed? Agent Smith asked. I don't think so. Milkshake shared a perplexed look with the other two. Black Turtle cleared his throat. We'd better get out of here before she comes back and yells at us some more. Yeah, Milkshake grinned. I guess you're with me. Black Turtle smiled like a lovesick teenager. Aren't you lucky? Milkshakes rolled her eyes and grabbed his arm. Come on, she looked at Agent Smith. We'll be in touch. Agent Smith took a breath, her mind still trying to sort out the last 15 minutes. Instead of getting into what Mud's problem was, she pointed at the door and asked Agent Bigfoot a simple question. Are those two an item? No, Bigfoot shook his head. But everyone thinks they should be. I've never seen them be so flirty before. This day is only getting stranger and stranger. Something finally clicked in Agent Smith's brain. Wait, is it Friday? Bigfoot nodded. It's almost noon. You've been out all night. Agent Smith chided herself. She should have figured out the significance of the fact that Agent Bigfoot was both clean and in different clothes than the last time she'd seen him. She struggled to sit up. What happened? Not much. Bunnynose and Amphibian Queen are still working on the confessionals, and Milkshakes and Black Turtle were doing damage control after the explosion. Mud was busy with something else, which is why she wanted to report this morning. Agent Smith winced. I lost more than 12 hours. Don't worry, the others have it under control. He gave her a sheepish look and jerked his head toward the door. I have to go. Just for a second. I'll be back. Sitting up provoked dizziness as well as potential vomiting, so Agent Smith slunk back down and let her head sink into the pillow. She was missing something. The puzzle pieces she'd gathered the day before danced around in her head, trying to sort themselves out and failing miserably. Sci-5 was missing. The last person of interest who had seen him alive had been Lucy, a scorned woman who had dropped Sci-5 off on the side of the freeway and left him without shoes or pants. After meeting the woman, Agent Smith had no doubt that she'd done as she had said. But then what happened? He'd called Rob Harker. Rob had sent a car, but when it got there, Sci-5 was already gone. Someone else had picked him up. Had they worked out when each vehicle had arrived? She didn't think so. The Turkish operatives had come after that, right? But Sci-5 was long gone by then. It all came back to the first car, the one no one had seen or caught on film. It's possible that Rob had sent two cars, just to throw people off the track, but what would Rob Harker want with Sci-5? They were friends. He could call Sci-5 whenever he wanted. She remembered Rob's hungry eyes and his roaming hands, not to mention the delight with which he'd told her about hosting the We Give Them Away Because We Want to awards ceremony the next night. Correction, tonight. Did he have a soft spot for an old college friend? From what Agent Smith had observed, the only things Mr. Harker had a soft spot for were money, boobs, and fame. Right now he had money, whatever woman he wanted, and a successful show. Although he had looked angry when Agent Smith had asked him about his previous work, that semi-respectable show had gone completely down the tube, and then he ended up on Truth. He'd gone on to make Truth famous. Infamous, even. Apparently people loved to see entire families getting into fistfights on national television, although Agent Smith couldn't figure out why. As she thought, her eyelids grew heavy. She remembered Rob Harker, his hungry eyes, his roaming hands, and his plastered-on smile that never faltered as he told her about the rise of Truth. What had he said? When I got here, the place was a mess. He looked around, like a proud and hated father. But the show took a turn for the better not long after I started. We've been a big success ever since. Then he'd done something. Something important. What had it been? Agent Smith willed herself to remember the moment. Had he said something? No, he'd looked at something. He'd glanced at the candles. One of the pieces fell into place. Rob Harker had been using Sci-Fi's interrogation scent on the truth hurts. That had to be why the people who went on the show were so willing to throw each other under the bus. Agent Smith wrenched herself back into reality, eyes flying open. Agent Bigfoot sat nearby. What is it? He rose from the spare chair and moved to the bed. What time is it? She asked, searching for a clock. How long was I out? It's almost 5. Too long, Agent Smith muttered as she threw the covers off and started to rise. Whoa, you're on bed rest. Agent Bigfoot moved next to her and put a hand on her shoulder. You should lie back. Agent Smith shook her head. Rob Harker's leering grin danced before her eyes. Why hadn't she seen it earlier? No, she stood. We have to warn Milkshakes and Black Turtle. She glanced at the candle on the table. And we need to get that to the lab for tests. The words kept coming, like water going through a newly broke dam. And we need to get the rest of the candles out of our office and get the ones from the truth set and make sure that Rob Harker doesn't use them at the awards ceremony. And hold on. Bigfoot pushed her back on her butt. What are you talking about? She took a moment to compose her thoughts. Rob Harker is using Sci-Fi's interrogation confession scent on his truth show. So? So that means Rob has the interrogation scent. Okay. Agent Bigfoot drew the word out. Agent Smith waved a hand as another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Rob told me he wanted to retire soon, and that he had a nice spot picked out on the Black Sea. Agent Bigfoot blinked in confusion. Turks, Agent Smith pointed. He might be working with the Turks. There's no way Rob could earn enough money from reality television shows to retire anytime soon, not with the way he probably lives, so he's obviously working on something else as well. Agent Bigfoot slowly nodded. And you think he might be working with the Turks? I do. Hadn't she just been thinking that he could have sent 2 cars? That must have been her subconscious trying to get her to the truth. Agent Bigfoot drew his phone from his pocket. I'll call Mud. No! Agent Smith cried, a bit louder than she intended. She took a breath and regained control of her voice. She's already mad at us. What if it's nothing? What if it's something? Bigfoot blinked at her. In less than 48 hours, Agent Milkshake's rebellious ways had rubbed off on her. Only now, Agent Smith understood why Milkshakes kept moving forward. They might not have time to report in before everything went down. Agent Smith could still feel the sting of the tongue lashing Mud had given them, but she shook it off and pointed between her and Bigfoot. We can go check it out. Bigfoot stared at her. Us? Why not? We're not doing anything else. She waved a hand. But you're hurt. So are you. But everyone else is busy. And if we can go and it's nothing, it won't matter. She pulled out the pouty lips and the sad look. Can you get us a car? We shouldn't. Agent Bigfoot's eyes begged her to let it go. That wasn't happening. Not when they could maybe solve the case and save lives. Or get me a car and I'll go myself. He sighed. I can get us a vehicle. Good. She rose unsteadily to her feet, glad that they'd left her in scrubs instead of a gown. The drugs must have kicked in because Agent Smith felt pretty good. Bigfoot reached his hand out to steady her arm. She smiled at him. Now all she needed were some pants and a pair of good shoes. It took them an excruciating 2 hours to find Agent Smith some clothes, talk to the science team about how to counter the effects of the candles, charge her phone, and procure a car. Agent Bigfoot had insisted one of the doctors look her over before they left, so Mud wouldn't get suspicious. The SSA medical ward was under the impression that he was taking her home, but instead they were rocketing along the city streets toward the theater where the We Give Them Away Because We Want to awards ceremony had just started. Agent Smith grimaced as they squealed around a corner, the seatbelt grabbing at her bruised body and ramping up the pounding in her head. Still, between the pain meds and the low-heeled boots she had on, she felt much better. Turn here, she pointed left. The back entrance to the stage should be down this alley. This time she held onto the door handle against the G-forces. Her phone rang and Agent Smith pulled it out of her jacket pocket. Agent Milkshakes at last. She'd left about 10 messages. We've got a problem, Agent Smith said as she picked up. Where are you? Milkshakes asked. Mud just told me you went home. No need to go into that. She had important information to share. Rob Harker is using Sci-Fi's interrogation and confession scent on the truth show. That got Milkshake's attention. What? As Agent Bigfoot pulled through the alley, Agent Smith gave the abbreviated version of her conclusions. Milkshakes listened and muttered something under her breath as Agent Smith finished. Where are you now? Milkshakes asked. We just pulled up behind the theater where the awards are being filmed. Okay, we'll be there in 5 minutes. Don't go crazy before we arrive. The line went dead, and Agent Smith put the phone back in her pocket. She looked at Bigfoot. Well? He asked. They're on their way. Do you think we should wait? She didn't. However, she also didn't want to drag an injured Agent Bigfoot, not to mention herself, in without backup. But something told her she should. One of those gut feelings that years in law enforcement teach you not to ignore. I'm going to check it out, she said, opening the door. Just recon. Liar, he said, exiting after her. You should work on that. It must be the drugs. Agent Smith shivered in the cool breeze that ran down the alley. They approached a set of concrete stairs at the top of which stood 2 men who wore dark suits with not so inconspicuous bulges beneath their jackets. This is a private entrance, one of them said, stepping to the edge of the small landing. Agent Bigfoot pulled his badge and held it out. Precinct 19. We need access to the premises. The talker frowned, but the older of the two nodded. You got it. What? The first man demanded. Trust me, the other man said, opening the door. These guys mean business. We've got 2 more coming, Agent Smith said as she passed. They might go through the front door. Can you contact your people and get them in? Consider it done, ma'am. She gave him a smile and added, and have the control guys get some fresh air into the auditorium. They're going to need it. He raised his eyebrows, but nodded. Thanks. The door shut behind them, leaving the 2 agents in a dim hallway lined with stage props and a distinct lack of working light bulbs. Come on, Agent Smith said, taking the lead. They moved swiftly down the hall and into a prop room. It didn't take them long to maneuver through fake cars, building facades, imitation trees, ornate end tables, mismatched chairs, and truly awful couches. When they got to the other side of the room, Agent Smith reached out her hand to open the door. Before she could, it burst open, causing them to jump back. A stagehand, dressed in all black, held an armload of faux books and a teapot that dangled off one finger. Hey, you guys can't be back here, he said in a harsh whisper. We're live on the air. Agent Bigfoot held out his badge. Police. We need to get to the stage right away. The guy flinched away from the badge. Like a solid wall of electricity grew out around it. Look, I'm just a stagehand. Which is handy, because we need to get to the stage, Agent Smith said. You can't go out there, we're live. In a blur of pain medication and irritation, Agent Smith pulled her gun out and pointed it at the man's head. Which way? He gulped and waved the teapot. Up the stairs and to the right. Perfect. Agent Smith went around the guy and in the direction he had indicated. No one else tried to stop them. In fact, they didn't even encounter another person until they arrived at the back of the stage. A dozen or more people stood, scrambling to look through a small gap in the side curtains. A voice from the stage began yelling, You cretin! Someone laughed, dark and sinister. I can't believe you tried to get away with it. Everyone knows that the only reason you're still around in this business is because you always find the best actors. And we all know how you do that, now don't we? A smattering of uncomfortable laughter came from the audience. A different voice responded, The only reason you're in the business is because your daddy paid your way into every single stage in the country. Bigfoot looked at Agent Smith. Truth scent? She nodded. Walking toward the curtain, Agent Smith elbowed her way to the front of the small crowd. On the stage, a group of 4 men stood around a clear plastic podium infused with colored lights and what looked like little bits of diamond dust. The effect left everyone around the podium bathed in an aggressive disco ball-like illumination. Rob Harker stood back a little from the other 3, watching them argue, a look of deep satisfaction on his face. The expression turned into outright glee as one man punched another in the eye. Cries of protest and excitement rippled through the audience. Someone started chanting, Artie, Artie, Artie. The 3 men collided into a tangle of limbs and swinging fists. They lurched into the podium, which gave way under their weight. It shattered into large, sharp, crystal-shaped pieces. Agent Smith caught Rob Harker trying to hide a laugh. When she looked back at the brawl on the floor, She noticed one of the men raising a shard of the clear plastic above his head, poised to strike down one of the others. Come on, Agent Smith said, her gun still out. Agent Bigfoot followed her out from behind the curtains, his weapon also at the ready. Drop it, Agent Bigfoot bellowed. Agent Smith flashed her badge into the glaring spotlights. Kill the recording, go to commercial. People in the audience screamed, cheered, booed, and stomped their feet. She really hoped the guys at the door had delivered her message about the air circulation, or they would likely have more fights to deal with. She turned back to the brawling men and found that Agent Bigfoot had them under control. The threat of a firearm in your face stopped most people cold. The trio looked like they'd been caught in a game of freeze tag. One of them still had the shard raised above his head, his mouth agape and his eyes wide as he eyed the barrel of the gun pointed in his direction. A flash of movement caught her attention, and Agent Smith turned to see Rob Harker sprinting toward the back of the stage. Rob Harker, she yelled. Halt! Halt, really? Had she just said that? What had happened to stop right there? It didn't matter because he didn't listen. Agent Smith went around the frozen tangle of men, determined to catch up before Rob got out of the building. Long before she reached him, Rob Harker waved his hand in a circle over his head. A trapdoor in the floor sprung open near the other end of the stage. Without missing a stride, he jumped into the opening, disappearing like Alice down the rabbit hole.